So as the streams pop in here and things start catching up, just know that we're still here. And even if, so I don't know if you know, I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dallas County is just a couple miles east of where I'm sitting right now. They are in lockdown, meaning if you're not considered essential businesses, you can't go to work. Even if you work outside the county, you're not supposed to travel outside the county. Now, I say that to say that even if Tarrant County, where I live and work, goes on lockdown, all this goes with me. So I'm still here every day, and barring some unforeseen circumstance, talking to people live. And I have a lot of great interviews lined up. And we're not just going to talk virus, but we're definitely going to talk relevant to what's going on now, which is what today's guest is going to talk about, because I have with me Shaunti Feldhahn, who is the author of many books, including, there it is, Thriving in Love and Money. And I don't know about you, but suddenly money has become an issue for a lot of people because a lot of people are out of work and wondering, uh-oh, what am I going to do now, especially if you're check to check. I get it. Also, if you are quarantined by choice or by force, however that looks, the love side of that might be being tested right now. It's not easy when you're thrown into a stressful situation and cooped up sometimes. So how's your love life? Is it good? Is it a little strained? Is your spouse looking at you like, I wish you'd go back to work, or vice versa? Whatever's going on, we can get through. And so we're going to talk about some principles today. And I think it'll help. So Shaunti, she is online with me right now. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm cooped up too, like all of us are, but
Are,
it's
are,
a unique opportunity.
are you in a forced quarantine area?
No, we're not. We live in Atlanta, so at the moment we have escaped.
See,
We have escaped the big city lockdown, so we're kind of waiting. We're
I,
gonna see what happens.
I told my wife before Dallas announced, I said, well, you got New York, you got the entire state of California, you got Chicago. Next on the list, Dallas, Atlanta, maybe Miami. And so,
Yeah,
and then they announced Dallas. I was like, well, here we go. So, but I think
yeah,
you're in the same boat that I am. We'll see.
yeah. We'll
Well,
see.
so talk us through this. Help us through this time.
Well, here's my big picture message that I've been sharing with everybody over the last week and a half, I guess, since everything got particularly crazy 2 weeks, is that this is an opportunity. This is a moment in time where we have a chance to actually make a great big difference, not just for society as a whole by our actions, but for our family by our actions. And I don't just mean health in terms of physical health, but health and wellness in terms of relational health and wellness.
Hmm.
The book that you mentioned, The Thriving in Love and Money, it literally came out published March 3rd, which is, of course, every author's dream to have a book published a week before a national emergency is announced. But this was one of those things. Randy, you and I talked when I was there in Dallas taping um, about this was a really supernatural thing that God did to get this book published. And we know that it came out at this time for a reason. And one of the reasons we now realize is because this is about helping people in their marriages around money, not budgeting, not getting out of debt, but in our marriages. How can we come together? And there's never been a more important time for that than when you have millions of people all stuck at home worrying about money and maybe those tensions spilling over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so what do you say? I know you've been talking to people. What do you say to people that are not working right now and don't know if they're ever going back to work?
I say that's us. I'm a public speaker,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Every bit of my income just went away. Every bit of my husband's income just went away.
Oh,
So you have two self-employed people who run a family ministry, and that's us. And all of our events canceled.
yeah. But
So
most
this,
people didn't just write a book on how to handle this. You did.
I know, exactly.
So what do you tell yourself?
So what I tell myself is exactly what I was just saying, which is clearly, this is one of these moments that we have to trust God to provide, right? Like we all know it. Well, guess what? We get to live it. We get to, for example, stop getting irritated at all those Bible stories of the children of Israel wandering in the desert and getting tense about God providing when, hey, you're getting manna in the desert, you have the supernatural breakfast. How can you not trust God to provide in other ways? And well, we get a chance to live that right now and watch and see God provide. But the other thing that I think is incredibly important for me is to remind myself of the things that we found in our research for this book, and that there are actually moments like this where we have a chance to come together. And just for your audience to know, and I'd love to go into some of what we found, but just for your audience to know, we actually uncovered that there are a few pillars running under the surface. There's a few factors that are underneath our responses to money, and that it's not about the money if you're having tension about it. It's about what's running under the surface. So every day I'm thinking about, why am I reacting in a certain way, or is Jeff reacting in a certain way?
Yeah. All right. Well, I want you to get into that. I'm going to tell people again that you are watching us live if it's, 10 after 12 Central Time where you're at. And so you can ask questions. Chat is open on all these locations. I will relay some good questions to Shaunti. And again, this is Shaunti Feldhahn. She is the author of Thriving in Love and Money, along with her husband, Jeff. And they are both suddenly right in the position that their book addresses, and that they don't know what the future holds for them, and they're sort of out of work in a sense right now. So dive into some of these situations that you're having to deal with, that a lot of people are having to deal with, even in non-weird times. In normal times, these are things people deal with, but you're right, it's definitely timely, because these things are coming to the surface real fast right now for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, and our message to ourselves and our message to all of you is that truly this is a time where if we can address some of these things now, while we have this opportunity, while we're kind of on top of each other, and it's all very an incubator, which I probably shouldn't use that word picture, but it kind of is, for all of these issues to be more intense. This is the moment where we can use this like boot camp to actually work through some of these things and emerge so much stronger in a few weeks, a few months, whatever it looks like, for us to actually be stronger in our marriage around money. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just share some of what we
please get into these principles that are true, always true, and just maybe a little heightened right now.
Yeah, right. So here's what we found. We found 5 things that are running under the surface when it comes to our responses to money in our marriage. And big picture, it's not about the money. Like I said, tension that you're having around money is not about the money. It's about how money makes us feel and how it makes our spouse feel. And so here's sort of the starting point for those 5 things. Probably the first and most big picture, which is very, very important right now, is that we found that in general, we're kind of resisting being one in marriage, and it's coming out in how we handle money. And this is a moment where that's intensified, right? Because when I say we're resisting being one in marriage, that's just a fancy way really of saying all of us kind of have this tendency to kind of want to do what we want to do, and kind of handle things the way we want to handle things. And so there is, even without the intensity of what's happening right now, there's kind of this feeling like, it's sort of my money and your money rather than our money. And it in normal times, it can look like, okay, your paycheck goes into your account, my paycheck goes into my account, and we don't really have to talk about it. Like, even we go so far with sort of the millennial cohort, we found a ton of people in the research were like separate bank accounts, sort of to an extreme. Like they're married, but they have two completely separate bank accounts. And hey, could you Venmo me $50 for the gas bill?
Wow.
And and we, some of us might go, well, that's not me, right? We share accounts. We're one. Okay, and maybe you are. Plenty of people are, but 80% have this issue. And what we actually found is to ask yourself, okay, maybe you are one, but do you ever try to pull the Amazon package off the front step before your spouse gets home?
Oh,
Right?
now you're getting personal.
Yeah, that comes from the same place of kind of wanting to do what you want to do that causes some people to separate their accounts completely. And so this right now is an incredibly important moment for us to go, golly, we really do, especially in the face of an external problem like what we're facing today, we really do have to be together. Like, we have to be us as one team. We have to be unified. And we have to recognize that, yeah, in a marriage, if a marriage is supposed to be a husband and wife coming together as one and God kind of supernaturally joining us together, then that means by definition, I have to give up some of what I want to do on behalf of something much more important, which is us.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like? And maybe this is an opportunity to start having some of those conversations that maybe we've never had before.
Yeah, what's the right way to approach it if you and your spouse genuinely have different approaches and maybe with some validity on both sides, just different ways of handling the finances? How do we reconcile those?
Well, you know what? It's a really, really good question. And the key is actually, interestingly, is one of the other factors that we found running out of the surface, which is one of the other five, is to recognize that we have different things that matter to us. And we have different values, so to speak. And I'm not necessarily valuing what you're valuing. And you're not necessarily valuing what I'm valuing. And those could be an approach to handling money. And it could be, you've got the classic, someone's a spender, someone's a saver,
Mm-hmm.
for example. Or maybe you've got two savers, but somebody wants to handle something very differently during this moment.
Yeah.
And the key is recognizing something that this is going to sound really weird and relativist, and I don't mean it this way, but it's incredibly important to recognize that to some degree, your way of wanting to handle money and what you care about is just as legitimate as my way of handling money and what I care about. That unless you're talking about some bizarre, really unusual, like somebody who has a gambling addiction or something really big like that, that there's no one right way of handling things. And I'll give you an example that is a more normal times example,
Yeah.
but still is worth considering. For example, a saver, someone who's a planner, who really likes creating budgets and sticking to like a tight budget and everything goes into savings. That person just thinks that's just the right way of handling things. Like everybody knows that's just the right way of handling things. And kind of feels like someone who, if they're married to the spender, like the one who's maybe not quite as locked down, so to speak. Well, this is me and Jeff. Jeff confessed to me in the middle of the research. He thought I had a character flaw. It's like I just assume my spouse just doesn't realize how things are supposed to work. Well, and like I said, there are occasions where maybe that's possible, but those are rare. In most cases, no, it's just that the other person actually is valuing something very different. And I'll give you the example from a spender's perspective, for example. So a spender might be thinking, yeah, okay, God, like the saver says, God tells us to be wise. Absolutely, God tells us to be wise. That's saving. But God also tells us he's come that we might have an abundant life. and that he's given us good gifts to enjoy. And he's a good father who wants us to enjoy what he's handed to us rather than storing it up in our barns. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Both of those are legitimate viewpoints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
And
see,
we have to recognize that.
you just cheated and spiritualized yours.
Ha! Maybe I did. No, but do you see? We're both spiritualizing it, and
Right,
we're
right.
both thinking that the other person's isn't legitimate. Like, it was so easy before we did the research for me to think Jeff is just a killjoy. Like, he wants to suck all the joy out of
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
And I want to enjoy some of life rather than saving it up for some moment that may not come.
yeah. No, I hear
So,
you.
yeah, it's really, really crucial for us to recognize and have empathy for the other person's point of view.
Yeah. So I think here's maybe an example in my marriage, which is not an issue so much because I'm not the strict budget type. Like, I made a budget once and I don't know where it is. But I'm like, now wait a minute. Your second cousin's stepson is graduating from high school and we have to get him a gift? That's kind of the way it looks in my marriage. And
Yeah,
my
yeah,
wife, though, see, my wife is like, well, yeah, of course we're going to get a gift for someone because we need to show them that we care, and so
exactly.
you get into that kind of thing where there's no like, oh no, that's wrong, like a gambling addiction where you're like, hey, dude, that's just wrong. But you get into these sort of gray areas where you have to make the judgment calls, and yeah, you're right. I mean, I would be like, yeah, send them a nice note. But my wife's like, no, we want to show them, we want to demonstrate, because she's much more thoughtful that way. So, okay, so when you've got cases where
Yeah,
you're both right, or there's there's no clear wrong and right, it's just a
exactly.
judgment call, where's the meeting place on that?
So here's what we found in the research that works really, really well. And this is something that we've found in our research very clearly, and there have been other studies that have found similar things, which is it makes a huge difference if you can allow for, and again, this is during normal times, not when everybody necessarily is on a lockdown because you've lost all your income, right?
Mm.
But if you can allow for both of you as a married couple to have a pot of money, a bucket of money that you've decided how much it's going to be, and maybe it's $100 or maybe it's $500 or $1,000, but every month you have a pot of money that each person has to be able to spend however they like without having to check in with the other person, whatever that is that fits in your level of income and your budget. And so that would be an example of where your wife would say, well, it really matters to me to send $100 check to this person who's graduating, who's a member of our extended family. And you go, it doesn't matter to me. I think a nice note is fine.
Right.
And she says, well, that's part of my, fun money, or whatever it is, the word that you call it.
Yeah.
And you can go, or like me and Jeff could take that, let's just say it's $400 a month. Jeff could take almost all of his $400 and put it to what matters to him, which is to actually paying down a line of credit on the house that we built up for something that we did with the house. So he really wants to take that. And I think that that's like unfair. Like, why should I get to spend it on a gift or on
Right,
clothes
right,
and you
right.
spend it on this? But that's what gives him joy. That's what he wants to do. Or one of the things that means is that suppose that he wants to take me out for dinner for my birthday or get me a gift. That's his decision, and it's his money to spend.
Okay, so how does that not become the lack of accountability that you were pointing to before, where people have separate bank accounts?
Because what it is you two have jointly talked about what it is that you can afford, talked about your budget, talked about whatever the money is, and you've jointly decided this is going to be a pot, and it's a limited pot of money that each of us have that we can spend however we like without having to check in with each other. So it is not something that's done unilaterally. this is my money, this is your money, Venmo me the $50 for the gas bill.
Right.
Everything is joined, and then we separate out something that we can use something for what we value.
Yeah, it's basically budgeting a miscellaneous fund, and you get to spend this much of it. I get to spend this much of it, and we're cool with it.
Two separate. Think of it as two separate buckets, not one fund. That was what we found, actually, believe it or not, Randy, is that couples that did this were far more likely to be happy in their marriage, because it's allowing for that oneness, but it's also recognizing you're two different people that God has brought together that care about two different things.
Right, I hear you. My point was that basically you're setting aside a miscellaneous fund and splitting it out in agreement. Yeah. But you're agreeing to the terms of it, and obviously you're not spending it on anything illegal or immoral. Seriously.
One would hope, yes, exactly. Like, this is also...
Because there's transparency there.
Yes, there's transparency, but it also means that you're not gonna be mad at me,
right,
for spending that miscellaneous fund on. It costs you what to get your hair done? What?
Right.
Like, go to the barber. It costs $12.
Right, and you're gonna let him play golf or whatever, and buy a new, I don't know, fishing reel, whatever he likes.
Whatever it is. I mean, we found there was no gender relationship, husband and wife, with who's more likely to be the spender or saver. So if Jeff was a spender, that may be, what he spends money on. He doesn't really spend money like that because he's really a saver.
So he's going to pay down the bills. He's going to pay down. He's going to pay down the car or whatever while you're going to get your hair done. If that works for you guys.
That's the weird part of this, but that is what matters, as long as you both agree, and you are not going to be resentful of the spouse.
That's key.
Because if you are, then we're not in unity. We're not in oneness.
Yeah, and I like how everything points back to the unity and allowing for the differences. Here, let me ask you this, because a lot of people come into, especially in younger people and the first few years of marriage, they bring some baggage, oftentimes invisible baggage, into that marriage, and a lot of it manifests itself around money. Maybe it's someone who has dealt with financial insecurity in their family as a child and seen it wreak havoc. Just general fears and insecurities, or complete lack of knowledge about money, where it was never discussed with them. How do you recognize, identify, and then work through these where we have an imbalance oftentimes with just our awareness of how to be financially at peace and responsible at the same time?
Well, okay, the most important thing by far, and this is, by the way, this is statistically, this is what we found in the research. The most important thing is to be able to talk about it, period. The most important thing is to be able to communicate about money, which a lot of people, we found, unfortunately, 77% of people in the surveys couldn't really talk about money without defensiveness or the tension or wanting to avoid it. Only 23% of couples could kind of they were fine, right? Most of us, we avoid it more often than not. But what it means is then you're coming in, if you're speaking to this hypothetical young couple, you're coming in with this inability to actually come together around something that literally is going to impact you emotionally every single day. Like multiple times a day. Yeah. This is one of those things you can't get away from, because it's just our world and it's life. And there's a reason Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be, because there's an emotional component to money that really goes deeper than almost anything else. And so what we found is that it is crucial, absolutely crucial, for you to be able to, and this is why the book exists, right? This is why the research exists, to understand what is going on underneath the surface in yourself, not just in your spouse, although that's obviously crucial too, Why did I react that way?
Yeah.
What was it that set me off? You used an example of coming in because of somebody's money, what happened with money in their childhood. Well, one of the things we found, one of the other factors under the surface, is that truly it's really not what happened in our childhood, for example, it's how we responded to that.
Right.
And you may not recognize it. I cannot tell you the number of people who we were doing interviews and surveys, and we would this literally happened 3 or 4 times over the course of the years, where we had a series of interviews lined up, and we had couple number 1, husband or wife, sat down and said, well, I grew up really poor. And so I never want to feel that way again. And so I save everything. I never want to feel that way again. I save everything. 45 minutes later, couple number 2 sits down. The husband says, I grew up poor. I never want to feel that way again. And so I want to go out to eat. I want to enjoy life. I've never had the good things. I want to have them now. Same exact background, 2 totally different responses. You need to understand what's going on in your heart in order to be able to talk about it. And so that by far is the most important thing, not just for young people, but for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Understand what's in yourself.
Yeah.
And by the way, do you mind if I mention, Randy, there's a really good way of doing that we recommend for people?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you don't mind. I mean, this requires actually having the book or reading through the book. And the key is, we found that in all of this stuff about how we think and feel, go through what we found with a highlighter and a pen in hand and read it about yourself and highlight the stuff that applies to you and the stuff that's like, oh my gosh, this is so me. Like, I couldn't have explained it, but this is exactly what I'm thinking. And then both of you do that. And when you read each other's comments, you're getting this personalized tour into these inner parts of your spouse's heart and mind that neither of you could have articulated before.
Yeah, that's very helpful, I think. We're talking to Shaunti Feldhahn, author of the book Thriving in Love and Money. And right now especially, we always need love and money, but right now it's at the forefront. So check out the book. Yeah. That website, let's see, what is the name of that website?
It's thriveandloveandmoney.com.
There it is. And then Shaunti's website, you got Shaunti.com, SHAUNTI.com, which is pretty awesome to be able to get just your first. You're like Madonna, something going on here. Shaunti.com. Now, if you would, in these last few minutes, tell the people about the research that you're doing now and how they can be involved.
Yes, right now, because of this weird moment that we're living in, where we're all having a whole new response to marriage and money, I would love to hear from you about what it is that looks like in your world. And I'm looking for people to interview, and I'm looking for stories. So if you go to our Facebook page, if you go to Shaunti Feldhahn on Facebook, please send us a message if you're willing to be interviewed, because all the stuff that we've just talked about, it's all universal. It applies at every moment in history, but this is a very unique moment, and I'm trying to find out what is it that we can do in order to emerge stronger from this. And so what people are thinking and feeling, whether it's more difficult or whether actually they're finding themselves automatically growing closer, those kinds of conversations, how do we handle money right now? I'm trying to interview people and I'm trying to get their stories. So if you have a story to share, we'd love you to send us a message.
All right, and you're wanting that to go through your Facebook page, which I'm trying to find right now. That's the best place for them to contact you?
Yeah, if you go to Shaunti Feldhahn on Facebook.
I think I've got
it. You can also go to Shaunti.com and just send us a message through the website, whichever is easier for you.
Okay, I definitely got the website. So there it is. Here's what the Facebook page looks like, so that people hit it. Well, it's got your face on it. That's very helpful, because they'll recognize you, seriously. And then it's got your book, Thriving in Love and Money, on the Facebook page too, so you can check that out. and
Well,
go get involved. I appreciate all that you're sharing. Is there anything else you want to leave us with before we're done for today?
Well, get a sense for where you're starting. If you are, in this weird moment like the rest of us, and you're finding yourself going, this is an opportunity for me to emerge stronger, but I need to figure out what that means. Like, where am I actually starting from? Go to thriveinloveandmoney.com and take the assessment. It's a free assessment. It'll give you a sense for what you most need to work on, what you and your spouse most need to work on, and it'll give you a starting point to talk.
All right, and there is the assessment right there. People are watching me try to click that live. The internet's a little slow because everybody's on it, because everybody's stuck at
Yes.
home. So anyway, there it goes. Okay. Good grief, it's slow.
I know, it's
Uh,
crazy.
well,
The
and I'm streaming right now.
internet
Anyway,
is
there it is. We got it.
all
So,
right.
you saw it briefly. Check all that out. Hey, it'll give you something to do too, and it'll give you something constructive to do, which is better than binging on Netflix like I did all weekend. So, thanks again, Shaunti. Appreciate all your insight and the ongoing research you're doing, and I hope people will maybe, if they can, buy the book. They can still get books delivered, and do the assessment. Do something constructive. It'll help you out during this difficult time for public
Yes, it
speakers,
will.
and it'll help them out, everybody at home. So.
Yeah,
Win-win situation. Thanks again for being with us.
absolutely.
And thank you guys for hanging out. We will see you again, like I said, here every day this week, barring unforeseen circumstances. And if I have to take this home, it'll just change the background and the lighting a little bit. But still talking to people, still talking to some interesting people. Got a microbiologist coming on later this week, so we'll see where we're at with the whole situation around the world and maybe get some insight there. Regardless, be with us here on Life Today Live at these locations. Share, follow, subscribe, and we'll bring you more information and encouragement every day this week right here on Life Today Live.
Ah, yes, we have American gods. The gods of lust, the gods of secularism, the gods of indifference, the gods of amusement, the gods of all kinds of materialism that are rampant throughout America tonight. And God says you'll have to make a choice.